Get on board the Bernier bus train. Come get on board the Bernier bus train. Once you hear that clickety-clack, there ain't no time for turning back. Oh, get on board the Bernier bus train.
Good morning, USA, and welcome to another episode of the Bernier Bust Show. Joe Biden's and Pete Buttigieg's records on race under scrutiny during debate. I love Amy Goodman. I love all the interviews she does. She puts people on the spot so well. And now they're doing a debriefing after the last debate, and this Ryan Grim, DC Bureau Chief of The Intercept, has some things to say about Mayor Pete.
She was referring to the stock photo was related to a broader controversy.
Kamala Harris was referring to a stock photo from Kenya where Pete Buttigieg was trying to use it to promote his Douglas plan. That's what Ryan is about to say.
Over the way that he presented what's known as his Douglas plan for Black America. This is the primary piece of outreach that he has to the Black community. And when he rolled it out, yes, it was kind of funny that he used a stock photo from a Kenyan woman and her little brother to kind of promote the project for Black America. But more damaging to him, and which Harris did not get into, is that he listed 400 supporters of this plan, the top 3 of whom were leaders of the Black community in South Carolina. After it came out, they told The Intercept, two of them, Johnny Cordero, who is the chairman of the South Carolina Black Caucus, said, I explicitly told them I do not endorse this plan, and they used my name anyway. State Representative Ivory Thigpen said the same thing. He explicitly told them that he was not endorsing the Douglas plan, and they put his name on it anyway. He, in fact, is the co-chair of the Bernie Sanders campaign in South Carolina. Yeah. The third endorser said, I told them that it was okay to use my name for the Douglas plan, but I said, please don't make it look like I'm endorsing your candidacy. And she felt like they were intentionally vague in the way they rolled it out to make it look like they had done that. And it's very difficult to imagine a politician doing that sort of thing to a white state senator in Iowa or New Hampshire, for instance. It's really difficult to imagine that happening to any community other than the Black community in American politics. And so Harris pivoted to a conversation about what is your authentic connection with the Black community. And Booker also hit later on a related point, which is if you can't bring together the Obama coalition. And that was kind of a code for bringing together white progressives, LGBT community, and the Black community together, and immigrant community together into that coalition that's able to get more than 50% of the vote. If you can't make that entire coalition whole, you're going to fall short. But they didn't kind of name him when they were making that argument.
Now, Rashad Robinson, the significance of this, because you have Mayor Pete now polling number 1 in one of the whitest states in the country, Iowa.
This guy also took a shot at Pete, or at Joe Biden at the beginning. I've just kind of ignored Joe Biden all the way through because I'm sure he's going to tank. But it's interesting. If you want to go back and watch this, it's 44 minutes or so. And this guy is very insightful when he comes after Joe Biden, too. I want to keep the heat on Pete, because as they noted, he's doing well in Iowa, all white Iowa. But that's going to give him some momentum. And this guy, look at his wry, amused expression. He is really good at unpacking what Pete is lacking. Man, I'm getting so poetic today.
Iowa. Number 1, he's jumped something like, if you believe the polls, roughly 10% against Warren, Sanders, and Biden, which is why everyone was going after him last night, yet polling at almost 0 within the Black community.
Yeah, I've had some time to talk with Mayor Pete and really have pushed him. I don't even understand why he named his plan the Douglas plan. Like, can you explain, is Frederick Douglass someone that is really inspiring to you? What?
Rashad Robinson. I'm going to remember that guy's name. Because that's exactly the problem.
Why? What is your relationship with the community?
Yes.
I think, the problem that Mayor Pete has is that he comes across as a very good student, someone who is deeply studied and can understand issues, but doesn't have a context oftentimes or a story to back it up. And people realize that and recognize that. He is a millennial who does not have right now black friends out there talking about him, and that's worrisome.
Well, explain
Yes.
what happened in South Bend, Indiana during his campaign, the killing of an African-American person there.
Absolutely. The killing, both the police killing and the ongoing way that he's had problems with police community tension. The firing of the black police chief who was working to expose racism in the force. This is someone who's had deep challenges with racial justice in a relatively small city that most people probably can't point to on the map, who now wants to be president of the United States. Racial justice is not a side piece. It's not it's not charity. And while it is moral, it is actually strategy. It's a strategy to actually win. And it's a force multiplier for the type of change that we need on our side to get people mobilized out to the polls to expand the base. If a candidate actually does not have the type of relationship where people feel
Force multiplier. Did you catch that? It's a force multiplier. And so if you are authentic in helping people of low income and helping people of color, helping people in the LGBTQ community, helping women, helping college students, if you're authentic, that's a force multiplier. That's what Bernie has on the ground already, and that's what would get him easily past Donald Trump in the general election. And this force multiplier is what Elizabeth Warren lacks also, and what Pete lacks, and what Joe Biden lacks. And any other corporatist, cloaked or otherwise, is going to lack this groundswell of support, this force multiplier. That's such a good way to express what all the corporatists lack in this race.
Feel like they're known, like they're going to actually be engaged and they're going to be prioritized, then they're not going to show up in big numbers. And I think the challenge for Mayor Pete is that the Douglas plan on paper seems like a lot of good.
Named for Frederick Douglass.
Named for Frederick Douglass seems like a lot of good information. I've read through it. I've talked to him about it. But there is no story or context behind it. There's also not a history of him implementing it and executing it. And with all of these candidates, I am not interested, and folks are not as interested in the what, but the how. What is your experience and your relationship to movements to actually getting this done? We have a history, hundreds of years of stalled progress of inequality on race issues in this.
There you go. We have 100 years of nothing, not for people of color and not for the working class and not for young people. We have 100 years of stagnation. And so this is the larger issue here that Rashad is pointing out, that he doesn't have that groundswell. He doesn't have that connection to people. How, he said. It's not the what, it's the how. Now, the how for Bernie Sanders is labor. That's what everyone needs to come around to. That's what Crystal Ball comes around to very often. And other commentators are starting to figure out the how. Rashad's finger is right on the pulse of what needs to go on here. We need the how to be something powerful. That's what Frederick Douglass said that Pete Buttigieg doesn't understand. Frederick Douglass said that power concedes nothing without demand. It never has and it never will. The demand, the hammer, the leverage is labor. And the other groundswells that Rashad Robinson is talking about here, the on-the-ground support. You have to have friends. You have to have a machine in place that's going to do what the what part, or the how part, not the what part. So we've got to figure out how this could all get done. And there's only one candidate that really has a how connected to the what.
Country, and we need someone that is actually has experience, the ability to mobilize people, and the ability to move people. And we need to know that it's a priority, not something that you have to do to check off a box. He still has some work to do in that regard.
We're going to break and then come back to discuss this fifth Democrat.
That was brilliant. Pete Buttigieg faces new scrutiny for McKinsey past. Here's another wrinkle. Days after reports surfaced about the global consulting firm McKinsey's work advising the Trump administration on immigration policy, calls are growing louder for South Bend, Indiana mayor and 2020 presidential candidate Pete Buttigieg to disclose details about the work he did for the company. Political observers took notice Thursday evening when the New York Times editorial board joined ethics watchdogs in demanding that Buttigieg release the information, saying his claims that he is bound by a non-disclosure agreement create a situation that is untenable. Mr. Buttigieg owes voters a more complete account of his time at the company. Voters seeking an alternative to Mr. Trump should demand that candidates not only reject Mr. Trump's positions, but also his behavior, including his refusal to share information about his health and his business dealings, the editors wrote. This standard requires Mr. Buttigieg to talk about his time at McKinsey. I think that's going to come up more and more as Mr. Mayor Pete rises in the polls, if he continues to rise. He's the darling right now. It looks like the Clinton machinery has switched around somewhat from Elizabeth to Pete, as Elizabeth botched her Medicare for All position. Now, Pete, he's botching a lot of things too. I have a feeling, I almost hesitate to say this, but I have a feeling we may almost be coming into the clear to a two-candidate race. And that would be amazingly good news in the month of December in 2019, before the caucuses even start, if we had already winnowed the field down to two candidates. Bernie dunks on lying Pete Buttigieg. Sam Cedar, The Majority Report.
Sanders makes it clear that Pete Buttigieg is poisoning the waters in some ways by spreading these sort of right-wing talking points, and he's not having it. Here it is.
What do you say to that argument that there's no reason to pay for people who can pay for free?
Well, I say Buttigieg is wrong on both counts. Number one, of course, when we talk about making higher education, public colleges and universities tuition-free, we mean not only college, but we mean trade schools as well. There are millions of good jobs out there in construction and all kinds of areas where people are good at working with their hands. They don't want to go to college. And of course, we are going to make tuition free for those people. So what he's saying is not accurate. Second of all, there is the issue of universality. I'm very glad that Mr. Buttigieg is worried that I have been too easy on upper income people and the millionaires and billionaires, that I'm going to allow their kids to go to public colleges and universities. Just by the way, as they do go to public schools right now, Trump's kids can go to any public school, elementary school, high school in the country, tuition free. But the point is, I happen to believe that when you talk about programs like Social Security, like healthcare, like higher education, they should be universal. The way you pay for them, and the way I do it, not the way Buttigieg does it, is I do demand that at a time of massive income and wealth inequality, that the very rich will start paying their fair share of taxes, as will corporate America. You pay for it by raising revenue from the very rich, but then you say in a very simple way that any person who wants a higher education, college, trade school should be able to do it. You know, right now, that's what we do with Social Security. It is a popular program. It is a universal program.
I mean, this is the thing, that if you are so inclined to the concept of means testing, there is a very, very effective way of, for all intents and purposes, means testing benefits. You make them universal, and you increase taxes in a progressive nature. It is far more efficient than trying to determine whether people qualify. It ends up being
and that's the big problem with the other versions of Medicare for All. he's not mentioning names, and that's fine because Bernie's the only one who can really do it.
Far more fair and just. It creates a lot less resent about these programs, and it makes for a better society.
Right.
It's
Yeah, it's a no-brainer. So that's a good point. Now I'm going to close with this book. Bernie has all the leverage he needs next year. You might even wonder why we need a Bernie or Bust television show, because it's already done. Bernie already has enough support from Bernie or Busters, Bernie or Trumpers, young voters, people who are in swing states who support Sanders because they figured out Trump is a fraud. There are already plenty of people, more than enough, to ensure that no corporate candidate can win. I can already tell you with complete confidence that Joe Biden can't win in the general election. We know that Elizabeth Warren can't win and Pete can't win simply, if for nothing else, a lack of black support, a lack of the coalition that Rashad was talking about earlier. So they can't win anyway, but they certainly can't win with the number of Bernie or Trump voters, as the tempest, the whirlwind, the force of nature that none of us can control. Bernie or Trump voters can absolutely guarantee that you won't get Elizabeth or Pete or Joe. It's just not going to happen. So that's why we're saying don't bother signing the Bernie or Bust pledge. It's already over. We already have a big enough coalition, organized or not, to ensure that you're not going to get a corporate candidate. So the vote blue, no matter who people, they're already, they're without a cause. They're not rebels. I was going to say they're rebels without a cause. We're the rebels, and we're the ones who want to fix this country. Rashad alluded to the idea that we haven't gotten what we need. Black, brown, LGBTQ, women, workers haven't gotten what they need in the last 70 years from either party. That's the point. It's not about, Trump is so terrible that we have to defeat him no matter who. No, it matters who. It matters who. And so Bernie has all the leverage he needs. Help Democrats understand what that means. It means if you don't like Donald Trump, there's only one possible way to defeat him. And if you nominate Bernie, you'll not only defeat Trump, you'll defeat him easily. And not only will you defeat him easily, you'll start to put in place the organizing that Bernie talks about when he says, I am the organizer in chief. Then you're going to mobilize labor, and you're going to get people riled up, maybe even in the streets with picket signs, and you're going to put the hit on the oligarchs. We're going to put the demand that Frederick Douglass talks about. Power concedes nothing without demand. Bernie knows this far better than Mayor Pete. The demand is the part that's missing from every other person's platform. So I said on this, I commented, we need to get this book, and we need to sing the song too. I would love it if you learned to sing the Bernie or Bust Train song. A perfect present for the voter in your life who's not yet on the Bernie train. So chapter 1 explains why the U.S. needed a revolution before Trump was elected. And there's a lot of historical information in the book. We talk about the data of Thomas Piketty. We have all kinds of good information in this book. And just in time for Christmas. You can still order it now. And I cannot recommend strongly enough that Busters should give this book to any Democrat we know. And also teach them the Bernie or Bust train song. So that's the plug at the end. This book, I've read it thoroughly. I quote from it often. And if you want to disrupt your vote blue, no matter who, folks, this is the ammo you need. This will be great. I'll even help you. I've got some of the excerpts already typed up. If you don't want to type them up yourself, I'll send me a message on Facebook and I'll copy and paste them to you. And you can just start putting them on the walls, the Facebook walls of your favorite people. Get them on Reddit, get them on Twitter. Yeah, this book has a lot of information in it that you can use. Especially, I'll just close with this, especially if they still think that Obama's legacy was a positive thing, or Bill Clinton. This book will lay them bare without being soft on Donald Trump or Republicans. This book is very harsh on Donald Trump and Republicans, but equally harsh on Obama and Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton and other neoliberal, and even going so far as to call them neoliberal fascists. I think he calls them fascistic neoliberals as opposed to neoliberal fascists, but they're all kind of the same thing. So anyway, I hope your holiday season is bright so far. I hope you have a good weekend, and I hope to see you tomorrow on the Bernie or Buzz show.
Get on board the Bernie or Buzz train. Come get on board the Bernie or Buzz train. Once you hear that clickety-clack, there ain't no time for turning back. Go get on board